Welcome to this first Village Green Committee meeting. Just to let you know, there is no clerk attending, so Councillor Hunt and myself will make the notes and we'll produce the minutes from those, the draft minutes. The first item on the agenda is the public participation, and although we'll follow what the full council do, if we can answer questions, then we will. If not, you must respect the fact that we'll respond at a later date. So, are there any questions or points that anybody wants to make from the public? Bless them.
Thank you. The Parish Council leaflet entitled Update on Transferring the Village Green states on page 3 that the Parish Council is proposing to assign the entire lease of the Village Green, totally unchanged, to another party. I wonder how many villagers have actually seen the lease and are aware of what the Parish Council is proposing to assign. Break clause 5.6 in the lease states that the tenant may terminate the lease for the full area or any permitted part at any point by giving 6 months' notice in writing, in which case the land would revert back to the landlord. Currently the tenant is the Parish Council, but once the lease is assigned, there will be a new tenant who will have total control over our village green and what happens to it. A sublease, which was the original intention, would enable the Parish Council and thereby the residents to retain some control over the village green, but assigning the lease is final, and once it's done, it's done. A community interest company has the added security of having its assets locked for the village, and it can be a condition that all trustees must be a resident of the parish. A charity offers no such security, and anyone can be a trustee regardless of where they live, which means that potentially our village green could end up managed by people that have no links to the village and do not have the residents' best interests at heart, and there will be absolutely nothing that anyone will be able to do about it. Bearing this in mind, can you please explain how assignment of the entire lease is in the best interest of the village as opposed to a sublease?
Thank you. I mean, I'm not going to answer all of that, but I would appreciate if you could send us a copy of your statement, and then we can include it in the minutes if you like.
Give it to you now, if you like.
Well, it just needs to be sent to me. Yeah, I mean, we originally thought of a sublease, but to be honest, it just became too complicated. There were so many objections to a sublease and the terms and conditions in the sublease that, and this was a reaction to the sublease from residents, from a certain group of residents.
Sorry, can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Yeah, there was such a reaction to a sublease from a group of residents, or a certain number of residents, that it just became, quite frankly, too difficult and too stressful to try and work our way through a sublease, which yes, has advantages, it also has disadvantages. So the council took the option, as I said at the public meeting that we had, that the alternative options are an assignment or a surrender. We didn't consider a surrender because we couldn't guarantee that at the time the landlord would re-grant a lease to a charity or somebody else. We have a letter on that basis, but it's not legally binding. So the answer to your question is that we did consider a sublease. It became too difficult, and we have moved forward to an assignment. Chris?
Right. So you may recall in that public meeting that you held regarding the change from sublease to an assignment of the lease, that I made a point there in that pretty much everything that you changed in terms of the terms and conditions addressed a lot of the issues that people had with the sublease as it was. And you said that you understood it and you would consider it. I was just wondering if you've considered it, because the assignment only addressed the concerns because it changed the terms, such as the 12 years that was put in there and things like that. And the point was made that if the sublease continued, but the terms were changed, and that was the issue, the terms were not favourable for the village. If the terms had been changed, no reason why a sublease wouldn't work. It was just that the terms were not agreeable and were solid and were never going to be changed, only for an assignment then to address a lot of those issues. So I wonder if you did give consideration to those points, and if you now have any thoughts on whether or not changing the terms in the sublease may have made the sublease work rather than having to go down the assignment route.
Well, as I said at that meeting, the council decided to go for an assignment. There are a number of other terms which I mentioned at the last meeting, which the landlord has agreed to and is quite happy to have incorporated in a side agreement, which could add some additional protections to the parish for an assignment, such as no residential development on the site, which is a rumour that has been propagated by some villagers. It was never going to happen, but this would make sure it didn't. The removal of any benefit of the blue strip, which is the landlord's benefit, which would have allowed development on the blue strip. And I think there was one other term as well, which was that should any, which addresses Vanessa's point, which should the lease, the assigned lease, be terminated for any reason, then the landlord will revert that lease back to the parish council.
So that is going in, or are you planning on?
That's a side agreement which we address with the solicitors when looking for the draft assignment document. Those three additional terms is something which the landlord is prepared to enter into a side agreement to give protections to the village.
And will that be solidified before the assignment of the lease? Because otherwise it could just change, couldn't it?
No, it's in parallel. It will be a side agreement to the lease, to the assignment.
Signed as part of the lease assignment.
It's a side agreement, so
That's
separate,
okay.
but in
Signed
parallel.
at the same time.
At the same time.
Assignment to be an addendum to that document to ensure that both go through at the same
Yes,
time.
yes. So that protection is proposed and is in place, and hopefully will be in place. We're just going to draw that up.
Is there an opportunity to put protection in there to ensure that the control of HPOSCC remains with villagers? There is a danger and a worry that theoretically any 5 people could come in 5 years' time and take over, and there's nothing to stop that happening. They could literally be from a developer. I'm not saying they are, of course, but I'm just saying, worst case scenario, it could be a developer that comes in and suddenly takes over. So things like that are a big concern for people, that there is no real protection for what happens once that assignment is made, and you only get one opportunity to try and instill some protection, and that is the point at which that lease is assigned.
Okay, I mean that's a very good point. Can you leave that with me, and I'll discuss it with both organisations, not just with mine.
Thank you.
Any other comments, suggestions? Sorry, one at the back.
Can you tell me what's the purpose of having a working group consisting of all councillors that then report to just 4 selected councillors in a committee, which then reports back to all councillors again with recommendations?
But if you remember, Councillor Steadman at the last meeting made an amendment that the existing village heads of terms working group should consist of all councillors.
Councillor Steadman wanted the committee to consist of all councillors, and you refused that, so let's get the facts right.
The facts are as I stated. The facts are that Councillor Steadman wanted a working group of all councillors, and what we're proposing to do is recreate that group, because working groups fall at the end of the year. So we're recreating that working group such that all councillors can be involved in discussions about the lease.
The thing is, you have a situation where the working group of all councillors put forward certain recommendations that they completely ignored or vetoed by the committee, and then that then goes forward to the full committee again. So they're actually voting against proposals that they didn't actually agree with in the working party. councillors.
I'm sure you're aware that any councillor can put a motion on the agenda, and if somebody vehemently disagrees with anything that has been recommended by the council, or indeed the committee or the working group itself, they can put a motion on the full council agenda to raise that point or get it changed if they can.
But we all know that there are certain councillors that would like to be on the committee, but we're not allowed to be on the committee. So why was that the case? Why not have all councillors that want to be on the committee on the committee?
I think everybody misunderstands the purpose of the committee. The purpose of the committee is to be an efficient, small group of people who are able to work on behalf of the council to achieve certain objectives, and that's exactly what this committee is doing.
But it does seem farcical to have all the
I think I've
all
answered.
the councillors.
I think I've answered the
all
question.
working
We're not going to get
and
any
then,
further, are
and
we?
then you narrow it down to a small
Yeah.
select group, and then go back to all the councillors again.
I think I've made my point about the procedure. So if somebody, and I don't want to continue to argue about this, but the point is, if somebody disagrees with anything that either is brought up in a working group or a committee, they can raise their own motion at full council for consideration. That's the way. That's the way democracy works. So, any other questions, please?
Can I just ask who's on this committee?
Us four.
It's just the four of you. So how do you take a deciding vote if you're 2 and 2?
I beg your pardon?
How do you take a deciding vote if you're 2 against 2? If you've got an even number?
Well, there's a casting vote of the chair.
So in effect then, you'll always win. You'll win every vote that you want to win. Because the worst that can happen, surely. Oh, I suppose you could win 3 to 1.
Easily.
Easily. I'll not say.
Much wider fairness though, it would be good practice, generally.
It's generally good practice, isn't it, to have an odd number?
Well, we've got four. Did I?
Yeah, what makes you think that the public will accept an assignment over a sublease? Because obviously sublease was proving problematical.
It was.
So in terms of the assignment, do you think that the public are going to come out in huge support and say, oh yes, this is a much better idea?
Well, that's indeed up to the public, but I think there's additional protections. That
Maybe we need a public poll. What do you think?
Well, I think we've had one of those already, and I don't think
We'll
that's
have another
particularly
one.
constructive.
That was for the sublease, this would be for the assignment.
But as I said, I
And
think,
for maybe boost. That'd be a good idea.
Thank you for your ideas. We'll
Thank you.
take them back.
You're welcome.
Consider them. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, can I just ask why the proposals from 2 non-profit organisations are being treated as commercially sensitive when they're not commercial organisations? If both organisations, and I assume they do, have got the best interests of the village at heart, then I guess they would be happy for everything to be open and transparent.
I think all we're saying is that the discussions about those documents will be is confidential. The results of our analysis, all councillors' analysis, and the documents themselves will be made publicly available. They'll be a public part of the public record. I believe that both organisations have actually made their documents public anyway. So all we're saying is that the discussions of the working group will be confidential.
So I guess that's the question I'm asking you why, because part of these are.
Well, so I think
secret discussion.
Yeah, I think when you're discussing matters of commerce, it's advisable to do it in public so that people can freely express their views. Clearly, any recommendation will come for full discussion at the council.
So on that note, Boost is happy to make it public, but we've had a lot of information withheld from us, so there's quite a bit of a proposal that we've not actually been able to submit because we've been we don't have the same level of information. We have requested it, but it's not been forthcoming. So I think that needs to go on public record.
This is-
Police haven't made it public at the moment, and I don't believe that CC have made it public.
We chaired the original business plan. We haven't chaired the adjustments in those business plans,
Is
which
there any
aren't
reason,
enormous.
any reason why you haven't made that public?
Well, we're in a, as I say, when we're in a sort of bid for two organisations, and the reason we didn't make it public at that point until those bids have been seen by the parish council and discussed, and then they would be made public. I mean, if you're going to be kind of, it's like saying, well, we're going to say this, and if we all could make it public exactly at the same time, I mean, Boost could make a presentation of X, and we could say, well, we'll undercut that by 500 quid or 200 pounds or something like that. So I think that's the way it's been approached. So there's sort of protection for both. Really.
I don't think that would matter, to be honest, and to be fair, because we were told that financials didn't have any impact on or any bearing on the decision making.
No, I think
the financials would not be part of the decision making process.
And also that the scoring mechanism has not actually been released in advance. It's been, the scoring mechanism is going to be decided after the proposals have been received, which seems a very roundabout way of sorting out a public sector bid. But
well, first of all, it's not a public sector bid. As I've
I was
said
just
to you.
using Chris's words, not mine.
As I've said to you before, it's not a public sector bid. We have received two offers to receive an assignment. We're considering those offers. The scoring mechanism was asked for by Boost at their meeting in early April, and we issued our draft scoring mechanism or criteria on the 9th of April, which preceded the submission of Boost's bid. So Boost were aware, or have been aware, as indeed our HBO Sports and Community Guide, of the outline criteria that we would be using. As we said, it's not a public sector bid. We are receiving two offers. We have set forward some outline criteria, but as we said at the time, we said it in our email of the 9th of April, that it depends what people come back with, and if there are additional items which need to be considered, are worthy, there could be things that Boost have brought up, or indeed things that HBOC Sports Community Club have brought up. It would be wrong of us to ignore those in the assessment process. So I think you have to respect and allow a certain amount of flexibility in our due consideration of both bids, as we want to make sure we incorporate the features of all bids in our assessment.
And just to confirm, with the exception of financials.
As I said to you before, the suitability of the organisation concerned is our primary concern. We believe that the offers from both organisations will save the council money, and therefore the council and the residents are in a sort of win-win from a financial point of view, but the financial element of it will be a negotiation once we have identified a suitable assignee.
Okay, so just for absolute clarity, as I think you almost answered it, just for absolute clarity, so there is no weighting in the scoring or judgment or decision-making process. At this stage, until we enter the negotiation with whoever you decide to assign it to, there is no judgment or weighting based on any of the financial information put forward by either bid, is that correct?
On the weighting table that you've seen, which was...
We didn't see the table, sorry, we saw the criteria. We didn't see any weighting, there was no weighting in there.
Well, in the background papers, there's the weighting has been shown of these suitability criteria. And there is the element that refers to finance has no weighting and no score. Okay?
So that's a no.
No, it's a no. It has no weighting and no score. I mean, if somebody came in and suggested that they wanted to charge us £100,000, we might consider that to be inappropriate. But from what we understand, that both organisations are comparable in their financial savings. So it doesn't feature in our assessment.
Thank you.
And if whoever is the assignee, whichever assignee is chosen or is considered suitable, and that negotiations then don't produce a result that is successful, then of course we may change our mind.
Just for the record, there are no background papers in the public domain.
I believe there are.
Well, they're not on the website.
Well, I bow to Councillor Strutt, who tells me that background papers are available. So, please, I don't control the website.
We have a
Yeah, sure. Well, I've only got one spare copy, I think. You can have that if you like.
Well, any motions that refer to background papers shouldn't be put forward then, if there's no background paper.
Okay, I think I've
just
allowed
said
a little bit
something.
extra. Is there anybody else? that
Excuse me,
Yes.
I just said if there's no background paper, the motion, if there's any motions, they should not be considered without a background paper.
Thank you for that comment. Councillors have had the back.
So you're going to ignore me then,
Yes.
as usual. Yeah,
There we are.
ignorant.
Please, respect. Anybody else before I move on? Okay, so nobody else. Apologies for absence. We don't have any, thank you. Declarations of interests? No? No? Denise?
Oh, no, sorry.
No?
No.
And none from me. Okay. There are no minutes of the previous meeting. Now, the first item on the agenda is committee terms of reference. Now, the resolution at full council gave the committee quite extensive powers, and we wanted to make sure that they were proper and would stand up to scrutiny. And so therefore what we have done is proposed a slight limiting of our powers, which is by a voluntary procedure. And so we have documented in the agenda the proposed voluntary limits on our procedures and authority. So it gives the purpose, it gives functions and responsibilities, what we are authorised to do. It gives us delegated authority, and I'll just quickly run through that. It's delegated authority to instruct legal and professional advisors within the budget set by the council, conduct negotiations and prepare documentations for council consideration, and approve minor operational matters within the budget agreed by council. The membership shall be as determined by the council. The meetings shall be held as we decide, subject to our standing orders and with the requisite notice that's required. All meetings shall be publicly accessible in accordance with our transparency requirements. What we did want to make clear is that referral of all major decisions will be to full council. So whilst we've been empowered to address, deal with and progress all matters related to the village green, any decisions regarding the transfer, disposal or long-term lease of the village green or any contracts involving significant long-term financial commitments will indeed not be made by this council, by this committee. It will be moved to full council for final approval. Financial limitations, as I said, is £6,000, which is what was voted for at full council. As I said, we all are authorised to seek legal advice as and when necessary, and of course we do have to adhere, as any council standing committees we have to comply with standing orders and financial regulations. So I would like to propose that we accept those voluntary limitations on our powers. Yes. So I'll propose that. Another seconder? Okay, myself and Councillor Brown. All those in favour of limiting our powers accordingly? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is to form a Village Green working group, which is basically to reinstate the working group that we had before of all the councillors, and that is to discuss and review proposals for the management and maintenance of Village Green. The chairman should be myself, as previously, and we'll call meetings as needed. The working group should feed and review information to this committee, which will in turn make a recommendation for decision to full council. Unless anybody's got any comments on that, No? Okay, so I'd like to propose that we form that working group. Any seconders? Okay. All those in favour of forming that working group of all councillors? Okay, good. Thank you very much. The next item is the suitability criteria. Now, what has been prepared is a schedule which elaborates on the original suitability criteria which was developed by the previous working group. Now, I invite comments on that suitability criteria, and if anybody wants to add anything or subtract anything, but if whatever we agree today, we can recommend to we can just pass through to full council. All I would suggest to it from it actually is that if any, because it's quite specific as to what the selection criteria are, I think if any councillor, it would only be fair that if any councillor feels that there are additional items which they consider to be of significance, that we include a reference to those at the when they've completed the assessment form.
I think we need to elaborate on sports pavilion uses
Okay.
and what we're going to base that on.
Okay. Yeah. So, what are you saying? Sports community uses?
What it's actually going to be used for, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that concerns a lot of people in the village.
Okay. So it's number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah. Okay. So uses of the sports pavilion, item 7. And again, I think the only other thing that I would suggest is whilst it doesn't have a score or a criteria, that we allow councillors to say if they feel that any information is missing from either bid, either offer. So,
We haven't mentioned anything about car parks either, car parking situation.
well, that's subject to plan.
Yeah.
Subject to plan. Yeah. So, can I suggest that with those amendments, unless anybody's got anything else, but with those amendments that we elaborate on sports pavilion uses and also include a section in the response for people to add anything that they feel is of particular importance. Yeah, particular importance, and also if people consider there's any information missing from either offer. If we add spaces for people to fill those, for councillors to fill those in, are we happy with those criteria? Can I propose with those amendments that we accept those criteria?
As I say, I'd like a bit more time to sort of consider when we read it.
Okay.
So,
Well, we can always update if you let me know.
yeah.
So
As they stand,
okay, that's good. So I'll propose you second.
yeah.
All those in favour with those amendments? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's good. All right. Thank you very much for that. The deed of assignment. Now, we have received the deed of assignment, and I must admit, I was surprised at the speed at which it came through. But clearly they must have done it ages ago and just waiting for the instruction. So the deed of assignment, as the original instruction prior to Boost's involvement, it was set up with HBO Sports and Community Club as the assignee. Now, as far as this draft is concerned, we should ignore that
Yeah.
element of it, because clearly whoever is the successful assignee, their details will go in here. The only comment I have about it, apart from making the assignee details, removing the assignee details, is also that I don't think that Hatfield Royal Parish Council has a common seal to sign the document. So I'll ask for some advice on that. Yeah, and it's not one of the boxes. I think that's from 1893. But this is basically just a standard document. It's a standard transfer of whole registered title with the information put in. So what we're asking for here is to review the draft deed of assignment, and as I said, it should be blank, and request information about the seal.
It does say they've only used that as an example,
They have only used it as an example.
so it's a template.
Yeah. As I explained at the previous parish council meeting, the difference between this and a deed of assignment with Boost would be that a deed of consent is required, and Boost recognise that, and that would be a separate document. But it would be for William to consent to.
Yes.
Yes. Because HBO Sports Community Club have expressed consent written to this already. That was the original proposal. So with those two amendments, which is, as I said, checking up on the seal and checking up and removing the name of HBO CC from the draft, we should consider recommending, once we've got answers to those things, recommending that to full council.
So long as we know that your request was speaking about.
Yes, the side agreement. Very good point.
The side agreement is in there.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it, but if that isn't, I'm not.
Okay. Well, we will get that document worked up, because that's a very valuable addition, a valuable protection.
Yeah.
So the motion is to consider recommending the deed of assignment subject to those questions that I've raised, and you've raised, Sue, to be accepted by full council, noting that the current draft is for an organisation with formal consent. So, yeah, okay, approved. Next item is assignee proposal. This committee resolves to issue all councils a final combined document containing proposals for the management and maintenance of Village Green by both organisations. What I have done, because it helps me, is produced a document with both proposals in, so that all councillors then have all the information that they can review. So this is just purely and simply to that this committee resolves to issue that information to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
All approved?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And the selection criteria that we have on here, to make it easy to fill in, I've created a web form for councillors to, which gives you more, you can type away on that to give comments. The motion is the committee resolves to establish a web form for councillors to score and comment on the proposals by both organisations for collation and review. And then once everybody has submitted their assessment and their comments and their reasons, then that will be produced. A summary will be produced of all the responses for council for working group consideration.
Full council.
I think we'll discuss it with the working group first, and then on to the. The information will be available to all, but I think from the point of view of, because it will identify each councillor's response, I think that needs to be done at the working group first. Then can be anonymised if necessary for full council. So can I have a proposal to do that?
I'll propose that.
Okay. Okay, all in favour? Yeah. Okay, so we'll do that. And we have here legal advice. This committee resolved to delegate authority to the chairman and one other committee member, which I suggest, bearing in mind Councillor Hunt's excellent legal experience, that if we need to get a legal advice, then the two of us ought to agree what that legal advice is required. And we do have the powers to agree the scope of wording of any legal advice, subject to the budget that's already been voted for us. And that's just for this time. Next time it may be two other people.
Okay.
So just for the moment, if we do need any additional legal advice, it gives us authority for the chairman and one other committee member, which in this case is Councillor Hunt, to agree specific wording and scope.
Well, you can pencil us in on it anyway.
Well, everybody, yeah, you copied in on it, yeah. Everybody,
Yeah.
proposal? Yeah? Yeah? Everybody's happy with that, good, thank you very much. And the next item is the date of the next meeting, which will be confirmed with appropriate notice. Okay, thank you very much. We do have some confidential matters to discuss now, which